Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host Maria Legier, confirming the Illuminati one day at a time. This is Why I Am an Anti-Feminist, Part 9. The serpent cult has successfully infiltrated all levels of education. Their venomous fangs bit the thighs of thought and reason. The women are wonderful scales on their back, hardened into an armor to be used to deflect anything contrary to the commandments of their nest and hive. We have seen this ideology take the reins and demand control of every aspect of education. Anything less, and the cancel squad is out in force and in full bloomy gloom. The thought virus even goes so far down the line as to inflict their venom on poor and unsuspecting children in kindergartens. My wife was working in a kindergarten as it slowly turned woke. I might ask her to tell us about it someday. Purple penguins are the new gender-neutral term for small children forced into the blank-slated imbecility sent their way from the Institute for Higher Morality, known either as feminism or as Sweden. Attempting to start a men's group on whichever campus you could think of is met with sneers and smears and fangs and claws from the eternally oppressed feminist horde, who are so oppressed that they have the power and the right and the will to refuse men the right to create their own groups. This is also witnessed if someone dares hold a lecture to showcase the plight of men. It shall be beat down, burnt and battered by all the busy beaver bees the hive can send forth. If it is not aligned with the feminist ideals, men will be beat into submission, into silent sacrifice to the serpent god. All in the name of tolerance, kindness and inclusivity, you've got to understand. There is no harm done in telling a generation of boys and young men that they are evil incarnate and the only thing they need to do in order to be saved and safe and sound and later on spiritually embalmed is to denounce their masculinity and pledge allegiance to the flimsy flag of feminist thought, dogma, ideology and stupidity. To be reprogrammed and moulded in the plaster cast of what the hive mind consider the best shape and form of a man, neutered in all but the act itself, emasculated and forlorn, torn apart by wicked teeth and claws and fangs. Thoughts that burrow deep into their mind to spread through their central nervous system, casting grey clouds of confusion over their self-image and their core identity as men. It is the rise of the new man, an age of confused emotional flatulence where nothing they do is right. An age of marvelous re-engineering, re-examination of what makes a man, which, in my humble opinion, ought to be a question to be answered solely by the individual man himself. A real man is whatever the hell a real man wants to be and to do, and none but the man himself should have a say in what makes a real man. However, what really and truly makes a man is something none but the feminist pedagogues of high and mighty wondrous morality are allowed to say. Men, as usual, need not apply where their life and well-being is concerned. Certainly not any one individual man who, emotionally bloodied and beat by the feminist indoctrination squad, might object to the notion that he is the brutal and violent one on account of his masculinity and nothing but that. The serfdom is laid upon his head. To bend the knee and do and that will be all, thank you very much. We'll call upon your toxic masculinity when it is needed to protect women. After all, it is he for she, not she for he, or he for he and she for he and she. Getting angry as a natural reaction to a brain bleed plant from the Institute of Higher Morality, that is feminism, posing as a teacher telling all the boys and young men of their class that there is something wrong with them for the circumstances of their sex is strictly verboten. This goes against the grain and holy shit of their tangled thought loop. Though one would not be amiss in believing that the hive mind would rub their hands in glimmering glee, as this aggression would then serve as absolute proof of their claims about men and their hostility, their aggression and their violence. For is it not written in the divine scripture that the rage and searing anger of women is something holy, sanctified and justified, whereas the recurring anger of men is proof that there is something rotten and violent in the nature of men that must be undone and burnt on the pyre? Heretics, the lot of them, and so forth and so on, and even further on. A woman may be angry at a man, or all men, but a man, any man, may not respond in kind, for the woman will then resort back into her childlike state, whimpering and whispering in the awesome grace of her succulent neoteny that she must be protected. Emotional manipulation is par for the course you see and know when dealing with an ideologue who has weaponized the full force of the frail fragility of feminism, and claiming this facade of weakness to be strength. Personally, I fail to see how hiding behind crocodile tears and shivering in feigned terror is a mirror image of strength and resilience, though this may just be me. Frail and weak as I have been for years uncounted after being beat about the head, the brainstem and my looming threat of psychosis through education, friends and family for all my goddamned life, that there is something innately wrong and flawed with me, myself and I for being born a boy and developing into a man. Being a man is tantamount to being born with original sin. A hell of a message to deliver to boys and young men, I think. And getting through that, breaking the barriers and tearing down that image planted in my mind of myself as deeply flawed. Not flawed as all human beings are, but flawed from the core, flawed for being male, takes time and research, strength and energy. I was 28 years old before I heard anything positive said about men in general, which would not have been a source of despair were it not for the fact that there never was any other message than a negative message. There is something wrong with men. All men, for them being men. I would not be exaggerating if I were to tell you that this message has had a profoundly negative impact on my psychological and emotional well-being, having been led to believe that I was born wrong all my life. Though of course, this is obviously nothing but my fragile masculinity at full display, to be easily countered with a selfie from some smug feminist drinking from her male tears mug. For the pain of men is an incredible source of amusement, when it is not a taboo topic, either shunned or ridiculed from the very same forces of fragility that claim men need to open up about their woes and worries. It is a strange thing, a dubious doublespeak, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. If this admittance shows me as being weak in some way or other, I don't give a flying fuck. I am not ashamed of showing weakness, or of showing vulnerability, or of showing strength, for that matter. And is that not what the feminist hive mind have been preaching for all these years? Time to practice what you preach then. You can start by not shaming men when they do so. Of course, I understand these are not the topics nor the things the feminist hordes want men to share and talk about, and so it must be ridiculed and shunned and shamed. Men need to open up more. Translated from feminist jargon into men need to listen to the problems of women with an open emotional response. Women listening to men opening up about their emotions get translated into feminist jargon as emotional labor. Because a feminist will be damned if the woman in a terribly oppressive, heteronormative, quite probably white supremacist, definitively patriarchal relationship does the same thing that is expected of a man in such a relationship, which is to support one's partner, even during trying and troubling times. You see, men's lack of male friends is a burden on women, as more than one article have told us in later years. Then again, other articles tell us that close male relationships is also a burden on women, such as feminism. Men must never, under any circumstances, be allowed anything without first considering how it affects women. Evil, manipulative, oppressive, and absurdly narcissistic, I would dub it. But then, I am naught but an oppressive tyrant, so I wouldn't know. Obviously. Hypocritical, moral, busybody assholes with their stupid, fucking virtue signaling and hollow, vacuous, and self-aggrandizing display of lackluster clusterfuck B-morality. Shut the fuck up. Fuckface. Anyway, on the flip side of the crappy coin was the message constantly pumped into my veins like black tar heroin that there is something divine, something fantastic and wonderful with women. All women. And it is the job of men, of boys and men in actuality, to do all that they can to lift girls and women up, to sacrifice all that they can sacrifice in order to elevate women to godhood. Of course, I would come to learn later that this message only ever applied to feminist women, as feminism have no problems whatsoever with attacking, harassing, mobbing, bullying and deplatforming women who do not drink the feminist Kool-Aid, who do not partake in the feminist communion and their dogmatic sharing of victimhood within the sisterhood of esoteric knowledge. Which in itself is grim and darkly humorous, as this harassment dealt to women who do not drink the feminist cyanide is the harassment feminist women claim they receive from all us horrible and terrible and toxic MRAs, proving, perhaps, that good old psychological projection of feminism. That is to say, if a feminist accuses you or your group of doing something, it is something the feminist or their group are guilty of doing themselves, be that in thought or action. Interesting to note is also that men are the ones who suffer the most online abuse, not women. Yet again, we focus only on ending it against women, giving neither a fuck or a fart in regards to men. It is the constant grind, you know, as Anita Sarkeesian so daringly and courageously told the UN. Men need not apply to the UN, or any human rights organization for that matter. Men are not human beings. You see, a woman is either in or out, that is, in with feminism or cast out from feminism. A man, on the other hand, is never truly in, being referred to as an ally, not a fully fledged member of the craptacular sisterhood with all their flaws and frenzied claws. Split straight down the gender binary by the very forces that claim there is no differences between men and women. Yet, if that is true, why, then, do the esoteric sisterhood of high-flying morality demand this clear and distinct separation between men and women within feminism itself? Surely there would not be any need for a distinction between men and women, were there really no differences to speak of. A man would be a full-fledged member, not merely an ally to the noble cause. Though, of course, he is one of the tainted ones, an enemy from the opposing tribe, and as such may never be trusted. For he is not of the true flab and roll, nor one of the true ham sandwich. An individual man may be trusted, somewhat, as long as he proves himself, time and time again, by falling on his face and kissing the dirt upon which the exalted ones walk. And the exalted ones can publish with impunity articles with titles such as "Why can't we hate men?", then get offended when they receive pushback on such a clear and obvious bigotry and hatred. This is further proof of oppression of women, don't you know? Of course, this was not a real feminist, or not real feminism, or not, quote, my feminism, unquote. Deflect, neglect, refuse, and carry on as though nothing happened. For this hatred is real feminism, and anything else is a diversion. This submission to the sisterhood is not all that difficult to get, grab, or demand when the message is beat into the scrawny brains of young kids or teens through education rigmaroles. Political indoctrination, far better and even more terrifying than any totalitarian government would ever have been able to manage, no matter their tyranny and no matter their commitment to spreading the false flag truth. For this is playing on core aspects of biology. Men in general and their desire to provide for and to protect women is a force to be reckoned with, as is, I believe, the desire in women in general to be provided for and to be protected by men. Though feminism claims otherwise, it kinda falls flat on its pimpled face and freckled hair dye the moment one takes a look at the wage gap lie, understand where it is truly coming from, and then take a peek and a gander at the recent assault of angry asinine articles blaming men for making less than women now, and as such not being suitable marriage material for prosperous young women who are strong and independent but still want a man that earns as much or more than she does. How can he possibly protect and provide if she is the main breadwinner and he is not? The message does not change. It never will. For the message is clear. If men earn more than women, men hurt women. If men earn less than women, men hurt women. If men are not open about their emotions, men hurt women. If men are open about their emotions, men hurt women. If men have few close male friends, men hurt women. If men have lots of close male friends, men hurt women. Core message being, men hurt women, no matter what. Trickling all the way from feminist-infected pedagogy to the upper reaches of our flaccid political system, this message is delivered as truth without doubt. Men hurt women. No matter what, when, how, and where, men hurt women. And if you object, you are a man guilty of hurting women. We need not put an end to violence, see? We need to end men's violence against women, despite men being victims of violence far more than women are, and that is violence from both men and women. Believe it or not, but women are very much capable of violence. That men suffer more violence from both men and women could not possibly mean anything other than this. Both men and women who are prone to being violent would rather be violent against men than against women. Only the lowest of the low would dare to be violent against a woman. Whereas violence against men is so commonplace that we don't care when it happens, no matter how it happens, or the age of the man, or boy. And I don't think it is all that weird to get pissed off at this message that we need to end violence against women when men are the main victims of violence. Granted, I don't think we should focus on ending violence against men either. I believe it would be better to just focus on ending violence full stop. Now, this will never happen. It is a utopian ideal. Violence is not something that ever will be completely done away with, no matter the sex of victim or perpetrator. This should not mean that we should not attempt to understand the reasons for violence in a light not tainted by the ideological lens of feminism, who blames the patriarchy, masculinity, and therefore by proxy all men for all acts of violence, even violence committed by women. Perhaps viewing the problem and seeking solutions through a lens of objective neutrality, not ideology, would deliver better answers and solutions. But you know, this is just the ramblings of a mad and angry straight white male on the internet. And that is one of the most dangerous beings there are in this honky-tonk clown world of ours. As such, it can be dismissed by pointing to the color of my skin, the sex of my poor, miserable, abused and doubtlessly enslaved spouse, and my bottom-heavy pendulous balls. For that is an argument meant with much reach, truth and reason. Honk, honk. And shut the fuck up, fuckface. It is a strange thing for a movement supposedly meant to make things as gender neutral and as equal as could be to ignore the segment of society that is most at risk for violence when calling for an end to violence. Yet that is how it is, was and ever shall be, never mind the men, even when they are the majority of victims. For the resources, the empathy, the all and everything must go to the minority of victims. The majority must do for the minority, even if that means the majority of victims being left to bleed out and die in the ditches for having to make room for the minority of victims. The aristocracy are more important, without a doubt. The plebs and peasants are of no consequence. And that is the message we deliver to little kids, and expect them to grow into fully functional human beings, boys designed and engineered to become men who will sacrifice their all for girls and women, who in turn grow up feeling entitled to this, that and the other, into egotistical hubris where they don't ever need to do anything for boys or for men, even showing basic empathy. They must only care for and do for themselves. All else is emotional labor and other such nonsense. For they have been told all their lives that they are the victims of the malicious forces of misogynistic maladapted males. And boys have been told all their lives that they are, whether consciously or not, an oppressive force of malicious misogynistic maladapted maleness for which they must atone and repent all their lives. And prove their atonement, their repentance, through sacrificing everything for girls and for women, over and over and over again. Then, when we dare get angry at this blatant bigotry, double standard and hypocrisy, the feminist powers that be dare point their fingers at us and state that they were right all along. This reaction to their assertions prove their assertions without a shadow of a doubt. So give them even more power, money and so on such, pretty please with sugar on top. And a side serving of awesome trembling neoteny designed to make any male, whether blue-pilled or not, tremble and fall to his knees, begging forgiveness for his sins. Which is why, I believe, it is considered quite alright to have positions either in education or in employment open only for women if the majority therein are men. The opposite is frowned upon and considered illegal discrimination based on sex. Discrimination in favor of women is considered positive discrimination. An odd turn of phrase, I would have to admit, for within that phrase is the quite clear and obvious admittance that they are completely aware of the discriminatory nature of this. Yet they consider it positive, and so it is quite alright and just and reasonable. Because of course it is. For reasons of the moon being aligned with Mars, and you cannot argue with that logic. Some victims of obvious discrimination are less victims than other victims of perceived discrimination. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, and women are the most equal of all animals, whereas men are barely even animals. It is very strange to me how and why it is considered okay to deliver the message of the moral inferiority, the wickedness and cruelty of masculinity to school children. How the feminist indoctrination squad and inquisition are allowed to spread this vile hatred of boys and men in schools, to both boys and girls, without giving a single thought to how much this could negatively impact the self-image of boys. Creating a generation of boys and young men who are lost within themselves, dancing here and there, hither and thither, with no real semblance of self, for what is their true self has been painted, tainted and distorted into something wicked and evil. A generation of boys and young men made to be ashamed of their sex, their sexuality, and themselves in turn, ever and always doing whatever they can to prove that they are not that man, but that they are, in fact, this other man, all the while experiencing that the message delivered does not equate to reality, without seeing it properly. For all around them, everyone says the same, delivers the same message. The feminine is good, the masculine is bad. This despite neither being good or bad, merely two neutrals in a world that is grey, chaotic neutral itself. Two forces meant to cooperate and coexist within a shared space where they were not meant to go to war, but were forced to go to war through the might and awesome influence of a subversive and seductive ideology that preys on the very nature and core identity of both boys and girls, men and women. As much as the term red-pilled has become tainted and perverted by this succulent ideology, it is an important thing. And a message to be spray-painted on every wall there is ought to be one that says, in no uncertain terms, take the red pill, fuckface. For some reason, when boys and men are the core target for societal scorn and ridicule, neglect and destruction, we accept it and we celebrate it. We nod in agreement and do all that we can to implement the changes and the re-education. As long as it is only boys and men that need to change. Girls and women are perfect just the way they are. As long as they eat the pestilent cookie of feminism, of course, and bask in their perceived victimhood as much as humanly possible. Boys and men, on the other hand, need to acquire worth, need to prove themselves worthy, and this is done through living in service to girls and women. Or, well, not necessarily in service to girls and women, but in service to feminism. For feminism is the word of the day, the vague thing that is in vogue, an ideology built entirely around hatred of men and fear of masculinity, though presented as nothing but seeking equality between the sexes, with merely a few extreme and radical outliers partaking in the daily hatred and shaming of men and masculinity. That is, oddly enough, a few extreme and radical outliers that write the books and create the studies and the courses and the thoughts for the next generation of brainwashed and indoctrinated children to spread further into the mess and tangled wires, to wreak havoc and spread hatred and violence wherever and whenever. As long as the targets for hatred and for violence are boys and men. For boys and men are the enemy, and will forever remain as such, a smear upon the face of the earth that is to be eradicated or incarcerated or both. And that is it for this ramble. Join me next week for more rambling on why I am an anti-feminist. When this lengthy ramble is done, if ever it will be, I hope to channel my pestilent writing talent, what little there is of it, and searing rage into things of a more healing nature, that is, issues affecting boys and men and possible solutions to it. For I am well aware that not all the issues of boys and men are the fault of feminism. But feminism is getting rich and fat on neglecting the suffering of boys and men, of propping themselves up as the only voice allowed to speak on behalf of both women and men and the tainted term equality, standing on the corpses of men, as it were. And as such, it is a force to be reckoned with as well as a force to be attacked. As it stands, they have almost succeeded in elevating themselves above and beyond criticism, and this cannot be accepted, particularly not when their hypocrisy is as blatant as it is to anyone able to peep through the looking glass. Now, I will not stop writing about feminism, I just aim to not make it my main focus. Until next time, remember to honor your beard, gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Here follows an outro most befitting a video of this nature, a blatant attempt at virtual panhandling. Should you wish to support this channel, as well as my blog and any further endeavours this strange path will take me on, there are a few ways you can do that. The easiest would be to like, share and subscribe, as well as clicking the sometimes functional notification bell. Having the message, such as it is, manspread and mansplained far and wide will do wonders. You could also support my rambling and barely contained insanity by buying my books, which are linked below. More books will be made available as time allows. I also have a Redbubble shop, linked below, where you can buy prints in various forms of some of the artwork presented in my videos. Or you can contact me through the contact form on my blog for original artwork, commissions or prints direct from the source, so to speak. Until next time, I am your humble bearded bard, Morea Legier, man spreading majestically beneath the steel sky of doom.